When we think of ancient people, it's often easy to imagine them as completely alien to us because they had such different beliefs and customs. But these incredibly lifelike portraits of Roman citizens remind us that they were human just like us. They felt the same emotions and desires that we do. These portraits bring us face to face with real Romans, letting us connect with them, even empathize with them. This is a video about real people and real life situations. Luckily, the Romans produced a lot of art showing their daily life, work, food, and stayed till the end, because I'm going to show you erotic wall paintings so explicit that they wouldn't even be allowed today. One of the most famous and captivating mosaics is nicknamed the Bikini Girls. It was found in a large Roman villa in Sicily called Villa Romana del Casale. It belonged to a wealthy aristocrat and is dated to the early 300s, so late Roman period. This mosaic suggests a culture that in some ways was relatively more relaxed about the athletic female body than the centuries that followed, a sharp contrast to later Christian norms and a level of openness that wouldn't return until the modern age. And while it's incredible to see something that looks like an ancient bikini, these aren't swimsuits. They're pieces of athletic clothing, sportswear. The scene likely depicts a sports competition. We see a girl lifting weights, another throwing a discus, a running race, and a ball game. Activities like these often took place in the palestra, the exercise court commonly attached to Roman bath complexes. We know this is a competition because one of the women is being awarded a laurel wreath and a palm branch, symbols traditionally given to winners. And this competition likely takes place in a private elite setting, not a public bath, as these are women of the upper strata of society who had the leisure time to indulge in physical training and competitions. For most Romans, though, life was a daily grind, not a sport. Thankfully, the Romans also depicted their work. One of the most interesting jobs in ancient Rome was that of the fullers, ancient laundromats that used human urine as a cleaning agent. Their workshop was called a fullonica. These frescoes, found in an actual fullonica in Pompeii, show the different steps of the process. They would take the garments brought in by the customers, put them in tubs filled with water and urine, and stomp on them with their bare feet in order to agitate the cloth and loosen the dirt, kind of like a washing machine does. They used human urine because it contains ammonia, so it's a highly effective degreasing and bleaching agent, and would turn your toga silky white. Imagine soaking yourself in someone else's fermented urine. After stomping, the urine was squeezed out of the clothes, often with bare hands, then rinsed several times in a series of freshwater tubs. Then the garments were stretched and brushed to give it a nice finish. On the right, we see a guy carrying a mesh frame. As an extra service, they would drape the wet clothes over this frame and burn sulfur underneath it. The sulfur fumes would rise through the cloth and bleach it further. The owl on top of the frame isn't meant to be realistic. It symbolizes Minerva, the patron goddess of their craft. Fullers were often looked down upon because of their association with human waste. They would eagerly collect urine from public latrines, which gave them a bad rap. Yet their job was indispensable to Roman society. Everyone needed their services, and evidence suggests that many fullers were successful financially. At some point, the emperor even taxed urine collection. Also from Pompeii is the fresco of the surgeon. It shows Aeneas, a warrior of the Trojan War, so technically a mythological theme, but it's a scene painted with the realism of daily life. We see a physician carefully removing an arrowhead from his leg, while an anxious boy covers his eyes. His squeamish reaction to the sight of blood is relatable, and we can almost feel the pain of having a sharp piece of metal removed from our flesh without modern anesthesia. This level of naturalistic realism in painting wouldn't be achieved again until the Renaissance 1500 years later. In fact, Renaissance painters were partly inspired by Roman frescoes available to them at the time. Then in the 1700s, Pompeii and Herculaneum were discovered. Since then, these two sites have given us the largest amount of Roman frescoes, and the best preserved ones, because they were buried under ash for many centuries from the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. One of them, from the House of the Vetii, even feels like a Renaissance fresco. It shows a carpenter shaping wood with a hammer and chisel. using tools not so different from what we use today. While many of the frescoes in the house depict mythological scenes, this image clearly draws inspiration from real Roman life. What else would the artist base his imagery on? In Italian, fresco means fresh, so it's called a fresco because the artist applies the paint on fresh wet plaster, and as the plaster dries, the paint sets into the wall. But for me, the most relatable fresco is this one, the bakery. Some scholars interpret the man handing out bread not as a baker, but as a politician campaigning for office, giving free bread to win favor with the plebs. But that's debated, and it can also be a baker, and the scene clearly takes place in a bakery. It's a simple fresco, yet it's powerful in transporting us to the Roman world, giving us a glimpse of daily life. We've all done it, bought a fresh loaf of bread from a baker, which makes the scene instantly relatable. In the next chapter, we'll explore Roman bread up close, including real carbonized loaves found in Pompeii. This video is sponsored by Raycon. So a little bit about me, the creator. My name is Jordan, and I live in Vancouver, Canada. I recently got back from 4 months on the road in Calgary and Saskatoon. Apart from YouTube, I also have a window washing business, and all my clients are in those two cities, so I'm there every year. For much of the time when I'm on the road, I live in my minivan. I have a bit of a crazy life. Anyways, while I was there, Raycon sent me a pair of their essential open earbuds, which I got to use a lot while working hard at my job. I got back to Vancouver in late October and had to look for a new apartment, and while searching, I did van life in my home city as well, and in November, which was getting cold. Raycon's earbuds became super handy. I haven't stopped using them since. In coffee shops while I was searching for apartments online, when doing voiceover, in the gym, which is where I shower when I do van life, washing my clothes in urine. Let's go. No. And taking the dog out for a walk. I've been doing dog sitting as well. The multi-angular hook wraps around your ear and keeps them secure, so I can be active and they never fall off. And they're super light and comfortable. Sometimes I forget I'm even wearing them. And what's unique about them is that the earbud sits just outside the ear, so you can hear what's going on around you and be aware of your environment. The Essential Open Earbuds are here for the holiday season, and they are selling fast. Raycon audio products are up to 20% off this holiday season. Just click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/streetgemsopen to get up to 20% off during this holiday season. Order by December 15th to guarantee delivery by Christmas, because great gifts shouldn't show up late. And now let's get back to the video. The bakery fresco is valuable because it shows us what daily Roman bread looked like. In 1930, archaeologists unearthed a bakery in Pompeii with loaves of this exact bread still inside an oven. The baker had put them in just before Vesuvius erupted. The extreme heat of the eruption carbonized them in a matter of seconds, leaving us this rare treasure. And they stayed in that oven for over 18 centuries until they were found. It's fascinating when archaeological evidence matches the visual evidence in ancient paintings. The Romans called this bread panis quadratus, which literally means square bread. But as you can see, the loaf itself is round. The name likely refers to the 4 deep grooves pressed into the dough that divide it into 8 wedges, which made it easy to break the loaf into 4 or 8 pieces for sharing. This was the bread of the people, and the 8 triangular wedges even resemble a pizza. Speaking of pizza, they recently discovered a fresco in Pompeii with what looks like an ancient pizza. Of course, it's not an actual pizza. Tomatoes didn't arrive in the Old World until the discovery of the Americas, and mozzarella-style cheese didn't appear in Italy until the medieval period. But it likely had some kind of cheese on it, like a ricotta type made with sheep milk. Or maybe moretum, a cheese paste with herbs the Romans loved. So it's kind of a pizza, but really it's a type of ancient focaccia or flatbread, with toppings such as that cheese, and possibly fruit like dates, figs, grapes, and maybe nuts as well. The Romans loved mixing sweet and savory. Another fascinating fresco is this one, showing a Roman cake. This one blows my mind because it looks so modern. It was found in a villa near Pompeii called Villa Oplontis, and archaeologists nicknamed it Cassata di Oplontis because it reminded them of the modern Sicilian dessert, cassata. Modern cassata is made with ricotta, almond paste, and candied fruit. And this Roman cake may have been made with similar ingredients, maybe sweetened with honey and decorated with nuts and dried fruits, which you can see on top. But the most intriguing detail is the bright red icing around it. No one knows what it was made of or what dye was used to color it. But one thing is clear, this was a dessert made for the wealthy elite. However, most Roman food paintings seem to focus on whole foods rather than prepared dishes. Examples include these figs, apples and grapes, plums and pears, game birds and mushrooms, olives, what appears to be sardines, dates, and wine. I like this one with a kitchen towel and a ladle, which they already had back then. Some of these Roman food frescoes, especially this one, remind me of Impressionist paintings from the 19th century. I'm not saying there's a connection here, but the aesthetic is strikingly similar. It's unfortunate that we don't have many art examples of prepared Roman dishes, because I would have loved to see more of them. Since few frescoes show actual meals, we have to rely on archaeology and social context to imagine the dishes Romans ate, especially the meals of the working class. They often grabbed their meals at affordable establishments called thermopolia, essentially Roman street eateries, as depicted in this reconstruction. Here, they could get stews, fish, pulses like chickpeas or lentils, and other simple hot foods, either to eat in or take away. Most Romans lived in apartment blocks without kitchens or even running water, so the thermopolium was an essential part of daily life, a place to grab a cheap bite in a collective setting where you had community. Meanwhile, the wealthy dined in luxury banquets, reclining on couches with dozens of dishes before them. So while the plebs ate out every day, the rich dined at home, the opposite of today's norms. But as always, bread was the primary source of daily calories for most Romans. In my video on Team God, I showed this illustration, which accurately reconstructs a typical Roman bakery. I didn't even point it out, but many viewers noticed a peculiar detail. The Romans were unashamedly open about sexuality, often depicting phallic symbols and explicit sex scenes in their graffiti and wall paintings. In the next chapter, we'll dive into some of the graphic examples of sexual art, showing just how dirty those Romans could be. And now we come to the part of the video y'all really came here for. And if there are any kids in the room, now's the time to pause the video and get them out, because the frescoes you're about to see are gonna get wild. Let's start with the most obvious place, the Lupanar brothel in Pompeii, where a series of erotic frescoes were found. Lupanar in Latin just means a wolf's den, and a prostitute was known as a lupa, a wolf, so Lupanar is associated with brothel. The prostitutes worked in small rooms with just a stone bed and a mattress. There are no marks of hinges on the door frames, indicating that there were no doors, possibly not even a curtain for privacy, and the prices they charged were written on the wall. Most of these prostitutes were sex slaves, with no privacy and little freedom. The erotic art created a fantasy, but their reality was much harsher. They could be subject to abuse from their clients or pimps, and even violence, not unlike today. In some of these, you can see the prostitute wearing an ancient bra. The old theory is that these frescoes served as a kind of picture menu for foreign visitors who didn't speak Latin, so they could point to the positions they wanted without needing to know the word for it. But this explanation is outdated, and the modern interpretation is that they were simply there to decorate the space and add an erotic atmosphere. I think this simpler explanation is a more likely one. These pictures were in the main hall above the doorways, not inside the rooms. You wouldn't stop the act midway to go outside to point to what you wanted, so it was more likely for ambience rather than just a sex menu. It also aligns with the generally open attitude the Romans had to display sexual art publicly. Even today, these kinds of paintings will be inappropriate. But they weren't limited to just brothels. Another place in Pompeii is a bathhouse outside the city walls. It's called the Suburban Bathhouse, and in it is a dressing room with another series of even more graphic sex scenes. Below them are numbers indicating the spots where people left their clothes before they went to bathe, kind of like locker spots in a change room. These are possibly the most erotic frescoes found anywhere, including a threesome with a girl and 2 guys, this strange one that seems to have an animal's tail in the mix, and oral sex. Told you these would get wild. Watch me get demonetized. These types of sexual acts are unusual even in Roman erotic art, at least from what has survived, and they were actually considered socially improper for respectable citizens to indulge in such excessive sexuality, so even the Romans had their limits. Because of their shocking, taboo nature, it's thought that they may have been intended as satirical entertainment to make people laugh and blush. Wealthy homes were also decorated with sexual imagery, and Pompeii has many examples. The Romans didn't hide from sexuality. They decorated their world with it. For them, erotic art wasn't just about shock factor or giggles. It wasn't even porn the way we think of it today. It was superstition. They believed these images invited prosperity, good fortune, and of course fertility. The phallus in particular was a charm against the evil eye, a symbol of protection. Phallic motifs turned up everywhere, on walls and in shrines. The one in that bakery illustration is based on this tradition. Below it is written in Latin, "Here lives happiness." This is Priapus and his oversized phallus, from the house of the Vetii in Pompeii. This was an elite residence, and images like this weren't hidden in private bedrooms. They were displayed full-on in reception rooms where guests were entertained. Just like in the bath, it probably got a laugh, but it also signaled status. It showed off the host's worldliness and appreciation for mythological eroticism. In an elite Roman home, a respected host might display a painting of a great war hero right next to much smaller, explicit erotic painting. To them, displaying art with mythological scenes next to detailed sexual positions was considered sophisticated and would present the host as a well-rounded cultural connoisseur. Most of the art you've seen in this video comes from Pompeii, which can help you appreciate how valuable this archaeological site is. And this was just one city. Imagine just how much ancient art never survived into the modern age. But beyond all the jokes, fertility symbols, and shocking images, these paintings remind us that Romans were real people just like us. They worked, laughed, worried about their daily lives, and shared the same human experience we do, despite being 2,000 years apart. These images give us a window into their world in a way the old stones never could, reminding us that history at its heart is about real people.